everyone. This is Professor McKinney, and this is my dog Maggie. And this is my other dog Archie right here. He wants the stick thrown, but we have a really exciting video coming up. So yeah, let's dive into it. So in this video, we are specifically talking about learning and development for staff. Now we do have a special guest that's going to be joining us. And this person, their name is Carl Post. Carl and I met a little while ago through Southeast Tennessee SHRM, which is our local SHRM chapter. So with that being said, I will let Carl introduce himself.
My name is Carl Post. I work at Erlanger Health, and I am a learning and development consultant in the organizational development department. Yeah, so I really enjoy and have really embraced this role in human resources because it focuses on human. I mean, I always appreciate a company's best assets are their humans. So the opportunity to develop people, to see how we can be better through our best assets is what drives me to being in HR. One of my kind of personal goals is along that same lines is if I can help people enjoy their work, find fulfillment in their work, and stay at their job maybe 1 or 2 months more than they really would want to. That just in a company like ours that has 7,000 employees, that's like 7,000 months of work that I can impact. So I see that goal, that challenge of just really wanting people to find fulfillment and enjoyment in the work they do, and hopefully here at Erlanger. So that's what kind of keeps me in HR.
Awesome, Carl. Thank you for sharing that a little bit about yourself and what makes you specifically interested in working in learning and development. So we are going to get started on our first learning objective.
What are the 5 steps to effective training?
So when you're trying to have effective training, one thing that you should really try to do is to follow the ADDIE model. So what ADDIE is it's an acronym where each letter stands for something different. And it's a model that outlines the 5 essential steps for effective training. So first, you want to analyze, right? That's the A in ADDIE. You're going to analyze the needs of your staff to determine what skills or knowledge gaps exist. Secondly, you are going to design the training program by setting kind of like clear goals and objectives for what you want to do. The third part of ADDIE is that you're going to develop the content and material specifically needed for training sessions and to be able to address those gaps that you previously identified. The fourth part is implement the training. Ensuring that employees are engaged in learning effectively can really make sure that they grasp those concepts that you are trying to train people on in the implementation phase. And then the last part of effective training happens after the training, and that's when you evaluate the training's impact. You're going to do that to determine, whether those objectives were met, those gaps that you found earlier, and if the employees are actually applying their new skills on the job. So ADDIE, it provides a structured approach to delivering successful training programs.
What are the 3 types of learning objectives?
3 types of learning objectives that I know about would be cognitive, affective, and behavioral. And these are usually these help me when I'm creating trainings and development. Cognitive is focusing on what is the intellectual goal, like what knowledge or understanding or thinking do we want the person attending the training to engage in. Effective goal or learning objective would be based on emotions and values, right? This is kind of the attitude towards the learning. Posture, what do we want them to have out of that? And then behavioral really is, what is that outcome that we want them to achieve? When they leave this training, what will they do differently? And so, yeah, so I really try to um, use those types of learning goals as I enter into the training. And I try to see how to make that really effective. Do I need to focus more on content and intellectual? Um, do I need to focus more on the attitude of the learner and really just bring them into, maybe they already know the goals or the mission, vision, values, but maybe they're not just really positive towards that or in a position that they can live that out. And then, or is there just a behavioral? Is there something that is needs to change or be developed? I often think about kind of this phrase, right? If someone is rebellious, you rebuke it. If they're discouraged, you encourage. And if they're disobedient, you correct it. So I kind of like, recently I taught a nurse residence program on communication. And these are year one nurses into their field, right? So this is not a communications course that was meant to kind of rebuke or discourage, like, it was more like, hey, they're kind of launching into something like, what can I do now that can like maybe more on the effective, how can I help them emotionally and focus on their attitude towards communication, um focus a little bit on the cognitive, but really this, hey, they're starting off into a journey of their career, and how can I set that on the right path? Sometimes I'm called into a unit where maybe communication is just horrible, and I really need to focus on the behavioral outcome, because they're having difficulties in that. So those are the kind of three different learning objectives I kind of look at as I approach my trainings. And yeah, and I try to set a focus on that. Sometimes it's not evenly spread out, but at least having those learning objectives helps me to choose um, the right materials and activities.
What are the 5 types of training methods?
So there's several different methods that you can use when you're trying to train staff. So some of the most common training methods that you see companies use depending on their needs are on-the-job training, which involves directly learning in the workplace, right? It's where it's not necessarily that structured, but you're actually learning as you go doing the job. There's also classroom training, which provides like a traditional learning setting where there's often like a speaker that's a subject matter expert and they're doing lectures and discussions on various topics. There's also e-learning, which delivers training through online platforms, which is kind of what we're doing in our class, right? Because we're an online class where you're learning about human resources. Another one is through simulations, which is where people are able to, through training, mimic like real world scenarios and hands-on learning. And then the last one is through mentoring and coaching, which involves one-on-one guidance to develop specific skills over time. So once again, the most common training methods are on-the-job training, classroom training, e-learning, doing simulations, and then mentoring and coaching.
Why is the learning style important to training effectiveness?
So learning style does play into uh, the effectiveness of a training, right? So as I prepare my trainings, I really want to I want to look at how can I cover different learning styles, right? So there's auditory, kinetic, cognitive. And so my main goal is really to really embrace as many different styles as possible. Also the fact that um, I work for a large organization. There's 7,000 employees. So whenever and many of them work 12-hour shifts. So day shift doesn't see night shift more than a moment. And like there's just a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have people that only work weekends. So if I ever have the opportunity to bring day shift, night shift, weekend people together. I want to really make it a bit of a social environment where they can engage with each other. I'm looking to try to touch on the different motivations on what might be for their specific style. Even personal, what's their motivation, right? Why do they choose this profession? And normally in a work setting, right, a day shift person has a very um, distinct reason for wanting to work days or nights or weekends only. And so I feel that trying to understand their different motivations and their learning styles will have a more enriched experience. And part of that is just, again, what is the effectiveness of the training? And so the more I can understand the different learning styles, the better I can have an impact in the outcomes on the training.
What are 3 common training programs?
So when you think of training programs that are common across many organizations, there's really 3 main types that you think of. So the first one is orientation training. So what that does is it helps new hires and new staff understand the company culture, the company history, and kind of how their roles fit into a bigger picture of the organization. You also see leadership training. So that prepares employees and staff for potentially filling in management positions one day and kind of developing those skills so they can, move up the ladder within an organization. You also see compliance training. So what this does is it ensures that employees follow laws and regulations, such as safety protocols or anti-harassment policies.
What makes new staff socialization more effective?
Effective socialization, it helps new employees integrate into a company culture and become productive faster. The most effective is when there's a clear plan, so new hires know exactly what to expect when they're coming into a new role. Active involvement from managers and coworkers and various team members that they'd be interacting with, it also helps because it makes new employees feel welcomed and supportive by the team. Additionally, when you give a new hire or a new staff member some early opportunities to kind of help contribute to different projects or work, it really helps build confidence and a sense of belonging within their role and the organization.
What is the role of the trainee in the training process?
Yeah, the role of the trainee in the training process is really to be engaged in the content. I'm a firm believer, personally for myself as a lifelong learner, there's always something valuable to learn. So my hope as a trainer is that the trainee will have a position or a posture of learning, be open to hear what is shared in the content and to find the learning that's there. So as we said earlier, every training has objectives, and it would be that they could pull those objectives out and implement those into their lives, and or also help the others in the training to pull those out too.
So once again, I hope that you were really able to take something away from this chapter summary video. Once again, make sure to read the chapter. This week, we're going over Chapter 7, which is all about organizational learning and development. With that being said, I will see you next week for our next video.